I want to start with a story about our village patron saint, St. Lawrence. It's interesting where you end up living. And recently I discovered a great appreciation for the village saint where we live, St. Lawrence. St. Lawrence was a deacon in Rome in the 3rd century who served in the church by Pope Sixtus. As a deacon, his job was very practical and very relational. He took care of the treasury and the church's riches and resources, and most importantly, distributed aid to the poor and the sick and the vulnerable. In other words, he knew the people. However, he lived during a time when Christians were persecuted. So the Roman authorities arrested and then executed Pope Sixtus. And after that, they went for Lawrence because he was in charge of the wealth. A general from Rome demanded that Lawrence hand over the treasures of the church. Lawrence asked for 3 days to gather the wealth. In that time, rather than collecting the riches, he worked swiftly to distribute as much church property to the poor and to the needy as possible. On the 3rd day, when the Roman emperor came to his church to collect the goods, Lawrence gathered his whole congregation like this to be there. Upon arriving, the general could see no treasure left, but just a church filled with people. "Where are the treasures?" he demanded. And Lawrence presented the people, the poor, the crippled, the blind, and he declared, "These are the treasures of our church." Then he said, "This church is truly rich, far richer than your emperor and empire." He was making a radical claim. The church's true wealth isn't money or power, but people bound together in love and care. The authorities were enraged. Lawrence was tortured, and at the age of just 33, he suffered a martyr's death for this act of defiance. His story has become a lasting symbol of a core Christian truth, that community is not a means to wealth. Community is the wealth. This story resonates because I think in our heart we know it's true. And because we want it to be true for our community, for our families. It's how true parents always saw us and treated us. And I truly believe that God treasures our community of blessed families. So, I want to take this opportunity to talk about community and our community. Thank you. To talk about our beautiful community. And it's very hard for me not to start with this community, which was my community where I grew up. Bromley, it was called then. I had my first lectures here, the 7-day DP workshop. The first one I went to was here. And I remember getting in the car, so excited to tell my parent, Cain and Abel had sisters. Jamelia, no, that's not her name, but I was 13. Hang on, I wrote them down. Jamila and Aklima. Thank you, Uncle William. I remember the conversations I had at the back of this wall, the first conversations with elder sisters who took me to one side and showed care and interest in how I was doing personally. I remember living here in one of the cells. I don't know if that's still what they're called. They were very cute cells. You could touch all 4 rooms at the same time, 4 walls. While I was teacher training, and Uncle Bernard Shelley, who was running it then, would cook us baked beans with whatever leftovers he had from the day before for breakfast, and drive me to the bus stop if I missed my bus at 5:30 in the morning. He had such heart. And beyond that, where that has grown, and I remember, I have to call it out, because you're sitting there, Dawn. I remember one moment, there were a group of us sisters. We were young. We were discussing about the future, and the fear of infertility came up. And I remember Dawn just responding with, I would have a child for you if that was the case. And we were young. But I was so impacted by that because I believed it. That care we had and have for each other. We have such models of love in our community, and sacrifice and dedication and devotion and such service and heart. And I really want my children to have the full range of models that our community has, because what a treasure, truly. At the same time, I acknowledge our community perhaps is not in the best health, that we are carrying burdens and even crises. And honestly, I'm not that interested in the politics and the culture, though I don't deny that's important. I am so much more interested and always drawn to, how are we? How are our families? How are our blessings? How are our children? How is the health of our community, and how can we support each other more? So I want to share a few reflections and some perspectives from a book that I looked at again very recently by Scott Peck. I'm sure many of you will know him from The Road Less Travelled. This book is The Different Drum, where he goes deeply into community and what it truly means, not just in name, but to experience true community. He is religious, but he doesn't know the specific context of our community. This is not gospel, what he shared, but there were some helpful perspectives that made me think more deeply about our community now. I want to share 3 perspectives, and I believe in them there is a call to more deeply contemplate the health of our community now and of our families. Scott Peck would say that's very healthy to do, because no community can expect to be in perpetual, constant good health. It needs care, it needs attention, like anything does, or it can decline. And I think in them, in these reflections that all of us have, is also to remind ourselves of the treasure that this community really is, and perhaps to return and recover that and offer that more to each other. So, the first thing I want to share is that Scott Peck points out many people never actually get to experience true community. They get stuck in what he calls pseudo-community. Not a nice name, kind of means not the real thing, fake. I would never call our community that. What we have here is real. And it's deep and it's rooted. But interestingly, what he says is these pseudo-communities, the stages you might get to in a group or community before the true thing, it looks very harmonious, but it's a surface harmony. The essential dynamic of a pseudo-community is conflict avoidance. They prioritize being nice and well-mannered and the denial of individual differences. The members pretend and act as if they all have the same belief and the same understanding of things. And the thing about this fear of conflict and the ignorance of differences between us, he says, is that it crushes individuality, intimacy, and honesty. And the longer it lasts, the duller the community gets. Quite strong words, and it made me think. He's quite blunt. He goes on to say, this level or kind of community is fragile because it is dishonest. And he emphasizes true community forms only when people are willing to speak honestly. As I said, I'd never reduce our community to this. But is there something there for us to reflect on? Everyone suffers when honesty is compromised. And what's very interesting was that he went to say on, in these groups, because he's the facilitator often, and or he visits them and he has sessions, the most thing he has to point out to these groups, to members of these communities at this stage, that is preventing honesty, is that they are blocking the expression of pain and suffering, and that they are resisting the sharing of bad news. That was interesting. That hit me in our families and in our community. Reaching true community relies on sharing our burdens. To stop acting as if we have it all together, but to share our doubts, our challenges, our disappointments even, to share our inadequacies and our fears. Why? Because his father says, when you regard your brother's difficulties as less important than your own, the brotherhood relationship becomes distant. There is something so disconnecting when we do not acknowledge or help each other carry each other's difficulties. When we think we have to do it alone or to pretend that there are none. So often our hard eyes that we can have towards each other, especially towards those who are different from us, begin to soften exactly when we see the suffering and the courage and the brokenness and the deeper dignity underneath each of us. He noticed, though, a very common and valid response to his encouragement of sharing pain and suffering was, why do we have to talk about negative things at all? Why can't we just talk about the good things, the things we have in common, our success instead of our failures? I want the community to be a joyful community. But then he says, if you can skip and to the next one, please. He says, true community is joyful, but it's also realistic. Sorrow and joy must be seen in their proper portions. So it made me think. You can go back to the previous slide, please. How honest am I in all of my relationships, genuinely? Where am I hiding? What am I hiding? And how honest are we as a community? At every stage, from marriages and our blessings to our families, to our local communities here, our national, our international, right to the top, where we have always had a culture of shielding true parents from bad news. We really are dealing with some bad news in our community and some very challenging realities. And we're not all responding in the same way. That's hard. What are honest words and feelings that are yet to be expressed between us? And what could come from that? Yes, there are such deep convictions we all share and deep hopes for our community. And we should be rooted in those. But I think there's also grief and sadness and disappointment and fear. For me, the regular grief and sadness is how many we've lost along the way, especially second gen. And when might we stop to acknowledge that? And to ask the painful but vital questions of, could we have done anything differently? And could we do anything differently now to stop it continuing? We are carrying a lot, and currently with True Mother situation, with Japan, with Korea, with the context of our movement, we are carrying a lot. Is there enough space for us to acknowledge that, to express it? And of course, there is a risk in doing that. Of course. And that's when he goes to describe this second type of most common stage or type of group community he saw was when differences could no longer be ignored, and then the groups would enter chaos. Again, a strong word. What he meant is, this is when there was conflict, frustration, and power struggles in the community, attempts to fix each other, control, convert, strong emotions, and scapegoating, so often to cope with the fear by blaming some other person or group for being the cause of what's wrong. Because it's so painful to carry what's wrong. And it made me think, I can see that. I can see that. And I can see the challenge. What do we do with difference? I have three children. One is 2, he's still in formation. But the other 2, they are 5 and 7, fully fledged forming humans. I mean, I speak to the parents here like, I get it now. Each child is so different. Give me a family of Siennas, I could have 6, maybe more. We just do arts and crafts all day. Give me a family of Colliers, I could have 10 Colliers, 11. We make a football team and we just stay outside and play football all day. But a Sienna and a Collier, and then a 2-year-old Jessie. And that's the shallow. She likes crafts, he likes football. That's the shallow. In so many ways, they are so different. But in a family, you don't get to just have a monoculture. And this is my family. These are my kids. No one gets more close to me than that. And yet I am confronted by their difference regularly. And Sienna, her difference to me as a girl. What do we do about that? What do we do with the differences between us in our personalities, our faith, our approach to prayer? Because it's real. And under pressure, even the smallest differences, like how we call God or how we end our prayer, can become so much bigger than I think God ever hoped. So, Peck's most distinctive idea seems to be the only way through chaos and into true community is when people are willing to truly listen to each other. That kind of deep listening is about entering into the inner world of someone whose views are opposed to our own. And it does not mean you end up agreeing. That's not what conversation is or listening. But you make more space for that view to exist alongside yours. He says in particular, there is a prerequisite to that kind of deep listening towards each other. And he says it's to empty ourselves of any barriers we have to communication. Especially, sorry. I thought you were following along. Next slide, please. Deep listening, and the next one. Thanks so much. Especially our judgments made based on no experience of someone or very little brief experiences. And he says any idea or ideology, theology or solution that assumes the status of being the only and the one and only right way. This resonated for me. How many of us may feel misunderstood by certain others in our community? And it also resonated how for each of us, I think, there's such deep personal longing to be truly understood and seen, where we can truly express ourselves without fear and have a deep sense of safety and belonging. Next slide, please. This was by Rabbi Sachs, who I come to often. This quote especially, he reads, God knows us not abstractly, but personally and intimately. He turns his face towards us. He values us as individuals. He knows our name. There is no greater source of peace of the soul than this, knowing that we are known, recognizing that we're recognized. Community is the human expression of God's love. Isn't that beautiful? It is where I'm valued simply for who I am, for how I live, and for what I give to others. It is the place where they know my name. I really believe that. I believe we have all been known and seen in this way by at least someone at some moment. And I think we have all offered that to someone also, at least for some moment. And I believe we can offer this kind of knowing to each other more. And in our community in particular, I think through that kind of deep listening, we may come to realize that what some may perceive as fundamentalism and fanaticism may be an expression of deep devotion and a heart of attendance. And in return, what some may view as negative or critical may be a desire for honesty and a willingness to engage with reality, including the difficult bad news. A true community is about being our brother's keeper. It's a family. That's what true parents always modeled and taught us. A true community says we're brothers and sisters first and foremost. Community means I'm with you and I'm sticking with you until the end. Everything else is secondary. I think we long for that. Companions for life. For life. I think that's what our community is. It's built to carry that. It's built to build that. Growing up, there was that. I really feel that between us. Yes, we were younger. We were young BCs, but I feel there was that unshakable bond. We're going to be together forever. And I think it's something we desperately need to recover. You are my brother. Not, you are my brother. But first, what exactly do you believe? And it made me think, in our relationships, in our families, in our communities, have we become so focused on striving that we've neglected the listening? The unshakable brotherhood? Is there a better balance to be restored? So as I opened, I want to end again by saying, no community can expect to be in perpetual good health. It needs all of us to care for our community and keep investing in it, because community is practiced, not just declared. And we have greater depths of community to experience and create yet. So to close, I thought about what are some of the honest things I feel about our community that I could express now. And this is what I wrote down. I cherish our community, and I'm deeply committed to it. It's where everything that is most dear to me has sprung and is rooted. And I'm also deeply concerned for it. I'm yearning for more honesty between us. I'm yearning for more listening between us. I'm yearning for more space to return to the broader space of what it means to be a unificationist. I'm yearning for us to treasure each other just as much as Father treasured his first disciples. To treasure each other because we're committed to see God in each other, even when we don't necessarily see ourselves in each other. Because we need our relationships and our families and our community to be strong for the future, in order to take on the task of genuinely finding our common ground, our common goals, and of dealing with our reality and overcoming our challenges, which I truly believe we can do. Thank you. Pat.